Money is not power. Control is. You have been lied to by the modern world, by the weak-willed professors, by the comforting financial gurus who tell you that wealth is built through patience, humble savings, and the kindness of others. They want you to remain a passive spectator in a game where the rules were written by masters who never intended for you to win. They tell you that your low income is a permanent prison, a mathematical ceiling that limits your destiny. But I tell you that poverty is not a lack of currency, it is a lack of strategy. Look at me. I have watched empires crumble in the mud of Florence, I have seen kings reduced to beggars because they relied on luck, and I have seen men of absolutely nothing rise to dominate continents because they understood the brutal, unforgiving psychology of human nature. If you are reading or listening to my words right now with a small amount of money in your possession, you are not weak, you are simply unarmed. Today, I am stripping away the comforting illusions of your society. I will not give you soft advice about budgeting your pennies or cutting your daily coffee. I am giving you 10 brutal, calculated laws to weaponize your current position, manipulate your environment, and force the world to yield its resources to you. Listen closely, for fortune only favors the cold and the prepared, and the strategy of the silent multiplier begins the very moment you choose to stop being the prey. To conquer the realm of wealth from a position of economic scarcity, you must first eliminate your emotional attachment to money itself. The vulgar masses look at a coin and see a tool for consumption, a means to buy comfort, pleasure, or temporary status. This is exactly why they remain perpetually enslaved to a low income. A true strategist looks at currency and sees nothing more than political ammunition. When your resources are small, every single coin you spend on superficial luxuries is a soldier you are executing before the battle even begins. You must enter a state of calculated austerity, not out of fear or poverty, but out of absolute tactical defiance. Let your enemies and your peers see you as simple, unassuming, and financially invisible. In the theater of power, there is no greater advantage than being underestimated by those who possess more than you. If they think you are broke, they will lower their guard, they will speak freely around you, and they will never perceive you as a threat until it is far too late. True wealth creation requires an internal empire built on discipline before the external empire can manifest in gold. You must learn to live beneath your visible means so that your invisible capital can multiply in the dark, away from the envious eyes of the world and the predatory hand of the state. The second law of your ascension dictates that you must aggressively exploit the dependencies of others. The world does not reward goodness, it rewards necessity. If you possess a low income, it means you are currently selling a form of labor or presence that is easily replaceable. To break this cycle, you must look at your immediate environment, your workplace, your industry, or your social circle, and identify the critical vulnerabilities that others are too lazy or too blind to manage. Find the problems that keep the powerful awake at night and make yourself the only individual capable of solving them. Do not ask for permission, do not wait for a promotion, and do not expect gratitude. Simply assume control over that specific, vital node of operation. Once you become indispensable to a person of higher status or greater wealth, you effectively control their leverage. They will be forced to feed your financial growth not because they like you, but because their own survival and peace of mind depend entirely on your cooperation. It is infinitely safer to be feared and needed than it is to be loved, for men break their bonds of love at the slightest convenience, but their bonds of necessity are forged in iron and will never be severed as long as you hold the key to their security. We must now turn our attention to the brutal art of asymmetric asset replication, which is the secret mechanism behind the vintage machinery of the quiet multiplier. Scarcity of funds forces the weak mind to think small, but it must force the strategic mind to think exponentially. You do not need a vast treasury to begin multiplying your capital. You need an intellectual asset that can be reproduced infinitely at zero marginal cost. In your digital era, knowledge, media, and strategic systems are the modern equivalent of land and fortresses. When you create a digital blueprint, a specialized piece of media, or an automated process, you are constructing a psychological machine that works for you while you sleep. Every hour you spend refining this invisible asset is a stone laid in the foundation of your fortress. While the common worker trades his physical time for a fixed, linear wage, you must dedicate your nights to building scalable architectures that capture the attention and the currency of global markets. Do not seek the approval of a localized employer. Look past them to the vast sea of human desires and psychological needs that remain unfulfilled. Mold your asset to exploit those desires, automate its distribution, and let the small amounts of capital it gathers accumulate silently into an unstoppable mountain of leverage. The fourth strategy requires you to master the mask of absolute neutrality and impeccable reputation. The world judges entirely by appearances, and what is unseen simply does not exist. If you are struggling financially, never allow the scent of desperation to touch your clothing or your speech. Desperation is a psychological weakness that invites exploitation from those above you. You must cultivate an aura of calm, detached competence. Speak less than necessary, for a man who speaks too much inevitably reveals his limitations and his financial anxieties. When you are quiet, others will project their own fears and desires onto you, assuming you know far more than you reveal. Your reputation must be crafted as a shield of iron. Let the world know you as a person of absolute reliability, unwavering focus, and cold efficiency. Even if your stomach is empty and your bank account is drained, your external presence must command the respect of a prince in disguise. This impeccable mask will grant you access to rooms, networks, and opportunities that are fiercely guarded against the visibly poor. Once inside those rooms, you do not seek to blend in. You observe, you analyze the weaknesses of the elite, and you prepare to extract the value that they take for granted. Let us speak plainly about the illusion of loyalty within the marketplace. The fifth law demands that you treat all professional alliances as purely temporary arrangements of mutual convenience. The low-income earner often falls into the sentimental trap of loyalty to a company, a brand, or a master who would replace them within 24 hours of their demise. This is a fatal weakness. In your pursuit of wealth, your only true loyalty is to your own strategic progression. View every job, every contract, and every partnership as a stepping stone, a school of hard experience where you are paid to learn the internal mechanics of power and wealth distribution. Absorb their secrets, study their supply chains, understand how they manage their losses, and master their operational templates. The moment you have extracted all the strategic knowledge and leverage from a particular position, you must be prepared to abandon it without hesitation or emotional regret. Move onward and upward to a higher vantage point before the ground beneath your current position begins to sink. History remembers those who conquered new territories, not those who remained loyal to a burning castle out of misplaced affection. The sixth strategy introduces the concept of tactical vacuum creation. To demand higher value, you must master the psychological art of calculated scarcity. When you make yourself constantly available, your value naturally depreciates in the minds of others. Human beings inherently undervalue that which is abundant and easily accessed. If you perform your duties with absolute excellence and then pseudomint withdraw your presence or create a delay in your responsiveness, you force the other party to experience the cold reality of your absence. They will suddenly realize the chaos that ensues when your strategic mind is not actively stabilizing their affairs. This realization breeds an intense psychological anxiety, forcing them to reevaluate your worth and offer greater financial concessions to secure your permanent focus. You must never beg for a raise or plead for a better contract. You must create a situation where they are compelled to offer it to you out of a desperate fear of losing the value you provide. Control the supply of your execution, and you will absolute control the demand for your compensation. The seventh law commands you to ruthlessly eliminate the parasites from your personal empire. Scarcity of capital attracts a specific type of human clutter. Individuals who are content with mediocrity, who complain about their circumstances without ever changing their strategy, and who seek to drag you down to their level of economic stagnation. You cannot build a monument of wealth if your foundations are buried in the mud of other people's excuses. Analyze your social circle with the cold detachment of a surgeon. Anyone who does not contribute to your strategic focus, your intellectual growth, or your financial leverage is an existential threat to your future. Cut them off completely, quietly, and permanently. Do not engage in arguments, do not offer explanations, and do not attempt to save them. Your time and mental energy are the most precious, non-renewable assets you possess when your income is low. To waste them on emotional drama or the comforting company of the uninspired is an act of self-sabotage that I will not tolerate from anyone who wishes to call themselves a strategist. Surround yourself only with those whose ambition matches your own, or those whose power you intend to eventually absorb. The eighth law requires you to exploit the psychological biases of human vanity. The wealthy and the powerful are profoundly vulnerable to their own egos. They desire flattery, validation, and the illusion that their success is entirely due to their own superior intellect. Use this to your absolute advantage. When dealing with a person of higher financial standing, never attempt to outshine them or prove your intellectual superiority in a public forum. This is a common error of the insecure worker that results in immediate professional exile. Instead, make your master appear consistently more brilliant than they actually are. Present your strategic ideas in a way that allows them to claim ownership of the concept. When they believe an idea was theirs, They will fund it with their own capital, defend it with their own power, and push it forward with their own resources. You will be the hidden architect behind the curtain, quietly directing the flow of wealth into your projects while they absorb the public attention and the associated risks. Let them have the glory. You will take the gold. The ninth strategy dictates that you must conquer your fears of calculated risk and bold execution. Low income breeds a psychological timidity, a paralyzing fear of losing the tiny amount of security you currently possess. This timidity is the ultimate filter that keeps the masses confined to the lower tiers of society. You must understand that absolute security is a dangerous myth invented to keep the population compliant. When your resources are small, you cannot afford to play a purely defensive game. You must look for high leverage opportunities where the downside is strictly capped but the upside is mathematically exponential. When you find such a window, you must strike with absolute boldness and terrifying speed. Hesitation allows your competitors to see the opening, while doubt alerts your enemies to your intentions. A mistake made through boldness is easily corrected by an even greater display of audacity, but a mistake made through hesitation leaves you vulnerable to total ruin. Train your mind to view risk not as an emotional threat, but as a calculated variable to be mastered through superior strategy. The 10th and final law of the Machiavellian multiplier is the absolute mastery of emotional detachment and perpetual adaptability. The landscape of wealth and technology changes with the speed of a summer storm. The systems that generated fortunes yesterday will become obsolete tomorrow. If you attach your identity to a single skill, a single job, or a single economic doctrine, you will inevitably collapse when the tide turns. You must remain like water, fluid, shapeless, and capable of adapting to any terrain. Do not complain about the unfairness of the modern economic system. Study its currents and learn how to navigate its dangerous undertows. When a crisis occurs, the weak panic and look for someone to blame, while the true strategist immediately looks for the hidden vectors of wealth redistribution that always manifest during chaos. Your mind must remain cold, analytical, and entirely free from anger, envy, or pride. Look at the world exactly as it is, not as you wish it to be, for it is only by seeing reality with absolute clarity that you can manipulate its mechanics to your advantage. Your low income is not your identity. It is merely the starting position on a chessboard that you are about to dominate. To expand upon this internal chessboard, you must now understand the profound nature of micropolitical warfare within the corporate and financial structures that surround you. A low income often forces a man to look only at his immediate task, completely blind to the macro movements of power occurring above his head. You must train your eyes to see the invisible lines of allegiance and conflict between your superiors. Every office, every company, and every industry is a court of factions. Do not align yourself with a faction out of emotional sympathy or shared background. Observe which faction possesses the structural momentum and align your execution to serve their goals while maintaining your independence. Never allow yourself to be caught in the crossfire of their internal wars unless you stand to absorb the territory of the fallen. You must become a shadow counselor, an entity whose neutrality makes you valuable to all sides, ensuring your financial survival and ascension regardless of who holds the crown at any given moment. Furthermore, we must dissect the illusion of hard labor as a virtue. The modern aristocracy praises the worker who breaks his back for 12 hours a day, branding it as work ethic. I tell you, this is a psychological trap designed to drain your vital energy so that you never have the clarity to orchestrate your escape. True wealth is never generated by brute physical force. It is extracted through the leverage of systems, information, and human behavior. When your income is low, your primary objective is to optimize your day-to-day operations to require the absolute minimum of your mental and physical presence while maintaining an appearance of maximum execution. Spend the energy you save on studying the structural flaws of your industry, building your scalable intellectual capital, and mapping out the precise vectors through which you will divert the flow of capital from their treasuries into your own. You must also master the strategic manipulation of timing and institutional delays. The common man reacts instantly to every stimulus, revealing his hand and his impatience to the world. A master of wealth understands that silence and calculated pauses can reshape the terms of any negotiation. When a low-income worker is offered a pittance of a contract or a minor advancement, his immediate reaction is often a display of eager gratitude or defensive frustration. Both reactions are tactical errors. You must receive every proposal with an unreadable, stone-like countenance. Delay your response by hours, or even days, allowing the other party's mind to fill the silence with doubts about their own offer. They will begin to wonder if you possess alternative options, hidden networks, or secret leverage that they are unaware of. This self-inflicted psychological pressure often compels them to sweeten the deal before you have even spoken a single word. Let us speak heavily on the weaponization of specialized information. In the Grand Court of Commerce, he who possesses unique, actionable knowledge holds a monopoly on decision-making. While the average person consumes distracting entertainment or general interest media, your mind must become a laser-focused vacuum for technical and strategic data within your niche. Master the algorithms, understand the hidden laws of distribution, study the precise psychological triggers that cause human beings to open their wallets, and analyze the failures of those who went before you. When you enter a room, your voice must carry the weight of an oracle. When you speak on your domain, your insights must be so precise and unassailable that the wealthy feel completely insecure in their own lack of technical understanding. They will naturally defer their capital to your guidance because you offer them something their mountains of gold cannot buy: absolute execution and navigational clarity in a sea of complexity. Finally, you must look upon your path to financial dominance not as a frantic struggle for survival, but as an elegant, multi-year siege. Empires are not conquered in an evening, and a quiet multiplier does not build its massive momentum through sporadic bursts of chaotic energy. It requires a cold, relentless consistency that persists through every setback and ignores every minor distraction. Let the masses seek quick riches through reckless gambling and volatile trends. You will build your fortress brick by brick, system by system, asset by asset. Maintain your mask, guard your reputation with your life, make yourself utterly indispensable to the execution of power, and watch with a calm, calculating smile as the resources of the world slowly but surely bend to your ultimate strategic design. Take these laws, embed them into the very core of your consciousness, and step onto the world stage with the cold authority of a master who already knows the final outcome of the game.